Some defensive line help is on the way. Washington earns a commitment from Sacramento State defensive tackle DeSean Watts.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into a special bonus edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thanks for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And just a quick reminder to all you everydayers out there, wherever you're getting this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever that might be, please make sure to click that subscribe button, click the little bell down below, as it does really help the show out a lot. And you never miss when we have one of these special bonus episodes with some breaking news just like this one. Now, with that being said, this is going to be a really fun bonus show because I want to spend a whole lot of time talking about the #1 subject on everybody's minds around the UW community, and that's defensive line. So I want to talk about some guys that Washington is going to add on the defensive line to supplement their most recent commit, and that is Sacramento State's DeSean Watts. And this is a kid who I really love the addition of this guy to just really bring the depth that you need to this defensive tackle room. Because when you look at just the numbers right off the bat, he's one of the highest graded interior defensive linemen in all of the FCS. Washington has certainly had some success scouting Sacramento State in the past between Deshaun Lynch over the last couple of years and then Cameron Broussard in 2024 as well. But when you look at just the easy stats, the counting numbers, it's certainly exactly what you're looking for. 36 tackles, 4 for loss, 2 sacks. He's a first-team All-Big Sky player in this last cycle, 6'2", 318 pounds. Everything certainly checks out in that regard. And this is just one of those moves where when I look at what he brings to the table for this Ryan Walters defense, it's consistency, it's stability. It's something where I don't think that by any stretch of the imagination, he's going to be the last addition that we see along the defensive line. I know, spoiler alert, right? I just talked about that. But when I look at what this guy can bring to the table, it's exactly what Ryan Walters needs, because when you look at who's leaving the room between the 4 guys that are graduating and moving on to the NFL in Samoa Pepa, Logan Sagapolu, Anterio Thompson, and Taitayo Iungolele, and who is in the transfer portal with Bryce Butler, who wound up at Texas Tech, I think that DeSean Watts, again, is just the stable body that you're looking for in the middle of the defensive line, because this is a guy who I feel like has the strength in the lower body to be able to give you some reps at that nose tackle, because it's something I've talked about a lot, as you everydayers know. I'm really curious to see if Ryan Walters is going to go back to that 5 down front a little bit more often in 2026, depending on the personnel he's going to be able to bring in through the transfer portal and how that might couple with guys already in the room. If you expect, I don't know, one of these redshirt freshman edge rushers like a Caleb Smith to step up and give you something alongside maybe these true freshmen who can get into rotation in JD Hill and Derek Coleman-Brusa and whoever else you think is going to be able to step up and contribute, I think that the portal is going to go a long way at that position as well. But again, this is exactly what you're looking for. A guy who can line up at multiple positions, a guy who can get after the quarterback a little bit. I don't think he's necessarily the all-world pass rusher that you're looking for in the middle. But again, this is a guy who has shown he can get after the quarterback and he can provide exactly what you're looking for in that regard. And with this Ryan Walters scheme, especially with how we saw Washington defend the run last year, he is someone who's going to be very, very valuable in that regard. And as we just continue to watch the recruitment of this room play out, this is the guy who getting him in the boat early is so important, because it's not necessarily about anything other than the fit that he brings to the table in the middle of the defense. Where if you want to line him up at nose tackle, that's great. If you want to line him up at the 2-eye, the 3-eye, the 4-eye, whatever that might be, I think he can do that for you and give you exactly what you're looking for. Because when you couple him with some of the guys that we'll talk about later on, I think that is the recipe for success that Ryan Walters is looking for when you do need a guy who can really wreak havoc and has all of the pass rush numbers that you're looking for, whether it be, 10, 11 tackles for loss in a season or say 5 or 6 sacks from the interior at a lower level, wherever else that guy might be, if you feel that they're out there. And then combined with this guy who, when he does get into some of these one-on-one matchups against interior offensive linemen, he has the strength and some of the pass rush moves to be able to put that together and win on a consistent basis. That's exactly what you're looking for, because again, this is why I wanted to spend this entire bonus show talking about the defensive line. You're not just taking one guy at that position. You're taking 3. You're taking 4, and probably an edge rusher somewhere in that regard as well. It's why I've talked about somebody in that 6'2", 280, 285 pound mold who can also play not just on the interior, but give you something at outside linebacker as well. A lot like Deshaun Lynch, who I know is a little bit bigger at 6'5", but again, just gives you that push that you're looking for from all over the defensive line. And getting experience in the room, however you possibly can, is so, so important. I'd love to go see Washington take a swing with one of these spots they have on the interior of the defensive line, on one of these former high-end recruits, a Keon Keeley, someone we talked about on the show a couple of days ago, a James Smith, another Alabama product, who, when you pair all of those guys together with the upside and athleticism that they have, with guys who can do their job and give you the push that you're looking for in the middle on a consistent basis and really hold up against the run, that is what this Ryan Walters defense is predicated on. When you look at how it succeeded at Illinois, especially with a guy like Johnny Newton in the middle, I don't think that there's going to be someone who's going to give you that kind of production. But if you have someone who can give you a little bit of that, and combined with all of the other talent you have in the room, that is certainly a recipe for success with what Ryan Walters is putting together. And with that being said, let's talk about some of these other guys, because like I said, DeSean Watts, he's going to need some help. Right after a message from our good friends over at Rocket Money. Let's be real, managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track down every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in, the personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. My personal favorite feature is I love how it tracks all my subscriptions and lets me cancel them right in the app with just a few taps. No more hunting down customer service numbers, which is one of my biggest pet peeves. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. One more time, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So there are so many other names that we need to talk about from this transfer portal cycle. I'm the number one guy who I'm most intrigued by when I talk about somebody who can give you that push from the interior as a pass rusher. And I know I mentioned that, 6'2", 280, 285 pound mold, is because the only guy in my head at this point in time was Ezra Christensen. And this is someone who it sounds like he's set to take an official visit to Washington in the coming days and has the production that you're looking for at New Mexico State from this past season. 42 tackles, 11 for loss, 6 sacks, 39 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. Another one of those guys who graded out really, really well by their metrics. And I think this is one of those things where the more you look at some of these guys that are in the portal, the production is more important no matter what level it comes from. I've seen a lot of people saying, well, hey, I'd love to see, power 4 guy come in with that same level of production. I absolutely agree. And I'd certainly like to see some of these other guys that have hit the portal recently, like the Missouri edge rusher, the guy from Pitt, who've entered, as I'm recording this today on Tuesday, Washington find a way to get into that mix as well. But we'll see how that plays out, just in terms of with how some teams are overextending in the transfer portal to make sure that these guys get on campus. And I believe that Washington should be in that same mold for these guys that are, or in that same bucket, I should say, for these guys who have shown to be productive at the power 4 level already. And it's something that is certainly a discussion that's worth having, but I also just like production wherever you can find it, because this Husky coaching staff has shown that they can do a really, really good job when it comes to scouting and when it comes to just finding diamonds in the rough at different points in time. And I don't think that Ezra Christensen qualifies in that regard, because I just think he's a really talented player. No matter what level he's playing at, he's certainly found a way to get after the quarterback. He's obviously been way more productive at New Mexico State than he has been elsewhere, like when you look at his time at Fresno State. But again, This is the guy who gives you that inside-outside versatility that you're looking for. He's taken some snaps as a stand-up outside linebacker, and at that size is just exactly what Ryan Walters might need from a bigger stand-up guy, a lot like what Deshaun Lynch was this past season. We saw how productive he was, especially not necessarily at getting after the quarterback, but in terms of batting down passes and being able to help out in that regard. And I think that's very, very important when we just kind of look at what's next for this Husky defensive line, because there is so much that is needed through the portal. And I think that whatever the number ends up being, it'll be really telling. My prediction is still 4 or 5 players between defensive tackle and edge. And if it winds up being a little bit less than that, I'm curious, because I think that that is going to be really telling of how the coaching staff feels about some of these guys in the room. Because as we all know, Armon and Jayvon Parker absolutely have the talent to be really successful at this level. We've seen Jayvon do that. We've seen Armon be able to come in and give you some push as a pass rusher. But with the injuries both those guys suffered in the past, obviously with Jayvon still coming off the Achilles injury that he suffered in 2024, it's going to be a little curious to see what their snap counts look like as we get into spring practice and get into fall camp. Because if those guys are healthy and ready to go, I think that's a really important addition. But I also believe that this coaching staff should certainly plan for a scenario where maybe they have to be brought along a little bit slower. And again, that's just something we're going to have to see what that looks like, because no matter what, you still need to go out and add somebody who can give you some kind of push in the passing game. And if they believe those guys are in the room already, great. But that doesn't mean that it's enough, and you need to go out and find more in the transfer portal. And I think Ezra Christensen is a really great example of that. And another guy who I think is a really great example of that is Darin Conley from Ball State. This is a guy who, as you ever dares know, we talked about on the Tuesday show, where he certainly has the numbers. 25 pressures this past season, according to PFF, 28 tackles, 4.5 for loss, 1.5 sacks. At 6'3", 284 pounds, he also is going to give you a little bit of push from the interior. And combined with a DeSean Watts, combined with an Ezra Christensen, when you want to keep rotating your defensive line as often as possible to keep it as fresh as possible, that is so, so important. And it's something I kind of like about what the strategy is, because yeah, you could go out and, blow it all on 1 or 2 really high-end guys. And I think that'd be a really fun strategy and it would be really exciting, but that's not the only thing this team needs. This team really needs depth and experience and a whole lot of snaps taken to that position, which is why DeSean Watts is so important with all the experience that he has under his belt. It's why a Darin Conley and an Ezra Christensen are so important, is because not only do they have some production in their past and a track record and a whole lot of film on tape, but it's because we know that those guys just have the experience necessary to play really well in the scheme and hold their gaps, do all the stuff in run defense that is absolutely necessary. I'm not saying that other guys wouldn't be able to do that. I just think that with the depth that Washington needs at the position, losing so much of your experience on the interior from last season, going out and finding ways to reload the room as much as possible are so critical in this regard. And it's not like we're not seeing Washington try to take a shot at some of these high upside guys as well, where Donta Simpson is another name that we talked about a little bit earlier today. And I feel that's worth repeating because he's got that potential. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. And at 6'3", 300 pounds, we're seeing some other top teams really compete for his services, whether it be Texas, Illinois, SMU, teams that are also certainly heavily in the mix for defensive line help. And if you're able to, again, on top of these guys who have that experience that you're looking for, add one of these dudes who has 3 years of eligibility remaining. Maybe you even take a guy like that to redshirt him and really try to help him develop, to give him an extra year of eligibility and really get ingrained in the system, and then give you a little bit more push as a pass rusher because you feel that that is where his skill set is going to be in the future. Great. Even better. There's so much more to look at when you add a guy like that to what is to the experience that is most necessary for this room, because it's why you went out and added a Samote Peppa last offseason to pair with a Taitai Uyunglele and Anterio Thompson, because they had all the experience that you were looking for. And I think that if you had one more guy in that room, and I think they were certainly hoping it was going to be Jayvon Parker, who gave you a little bit more push as a pass rusher and could eat up multiple defenders or multiple offensive linemen, on a regular basis, that was going to be the key to success up front. But I think that's one of the reasons that Ryan Walters wound up adjusting his personnel from going from his more traditional 5-down look to the much more traditional 4-2-5 more often, because you just didn't have the push that you were looking for at nose tackle in particular, or just along the interior of the defensive line. And combining all these guys together with Linneas Davis, with what you might be able to get from an Omar Khan or a Dominic Macon, depending on how this coaching staff feels about those kinds of guys, plus a Tiayu Mukais, a Derek Coleman-Brusa, a JD Hill, that kind of rotation up front, if it does live up to expectations and you are able to get more production out of that group, I think that that is the recipe for success. Because if you want to take a step forward, it's not about just having one or two high-end pass rushers who can get the job done. Yeah, again, that does absolutely help, and I'm not trying to say that it doesn't, but that is not what Washington needs at this moment. You need depth. You need a rotation. You need guys who are going to be able to give you 20, 25, 30 snaps a night and still rotate in and out and keep everybody fresh in that group. And you're not asking whoever your top pass rusher is to go out there and play every single snap, where I'm not saying it wouldn't be great to have one, but it just feels like that's not the approach that Washington is taking at this moment. We're going to have so much more coming on all of that and everything else related to the transfer portal, because that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you like what we have to offer here on Locked On Huskies, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, we're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel for new content every single day. So please make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday.